Hey, everyone. Andy All here. You're watching the Disappointed Cat Morning Show. Stories, news stuff. We're doing everything. But let's start off with some laughs.
I am so tired today.
You need a coffee.
Yeah, but then I can't sleep at night.
Then you take the melatonin.
How long do I have to do this?
Literally forever.
Why can't you ever tell me any good news?
Okay, otters hold their hands when they sleep.
Aw.
This is another day of good news, bad news. One, coffee. Yes, you're going to need it for most of your life. Melatonin, maybe. It doesn't do anything for me. I don't know if it's been proven to help sleeplessness at all. And otters, I like otters, whether they sleep with their hands together or not. So this is going to be good news, bad news. We have some good news and we have some bad news here on the the Disappointed Cat Morning Show. Of course, those are news cycles. That's in the news. We got some. What are we covering for news? I'm glad that you asked. Climate change issues, a ray of hope. We talked about this last night in the Late Show. Don't worry. If you were here last night watching the Late Show, I'm not going to belabor every single point. We'll just do a look. And if you weren't here last night, Jack Paterko and I took a look at a video about the restoration of land and how awesome it is and how it's a real change. It's a potential game changer in our fight against the climate crisis. COVID in Idaho. What are those wacky people in Idaho doing now? Nothing good, I'll tell you that. It isn't the new Catholic sex scandal, but it is a Catholic sex scandal that we're going to be talking about. DC statehood. It's coming, maybe, possibly. And then we're going to talk about the filibuster, because the filibuster and DC statehood are somewhat connected. I'm going to say hello to everyone in the chat. Hello, chat. Oh, and I want to say, too, that after this show, which, we'll get done around 10 o'clock or so, a little bit before possibly, we're going to be doing an open room. So anyone who wants to join in afterwards, the link is in the description to the backstage. You got to have a Chrome. I guess it'll work in Chrome. And if you want to pop in and just chat for like a half an hour to an hour, we can talk about anything you want. I'm cool with that. And so that's after this show. So hypothetically, in theory, what I'm hoping to do is run this show to about 5 minutes of 10, take a 5-minute break, and then head into the open room at 10 o'clock. So that's my plan. Jess M, good morning. Phil Lister, Imaginary God. Did I already say hello to Jesse Beer? I think I did. I'll say again, James Henry. How you doing, sir? Robert X, the unknown Robert X, and Simply Secular Dave from the West Coast. All right. So I want to make a confession. Usually like to start off or to continue the show with a question of the day. And this isn't really a question. This is more of another one of my confessions. WebMD, I do that. My main doctor, my main source of healthcare is WebMD. Yep. I just check it out. Anything's wrong, I look through the diagnoses, realize that almost everything that's wrong that you could have can be cancer. And so I think to myself, well, it's probably not cancer at this point. Probably minor health concern. And I just decide my knee-jerk reaction, of course, to go to WebMD. And so that's my confession. I will go and see. That's my primary care physician right here. And I think it is for a lot of Americans too. A lot of people here in the States, WebMD is their primary care physician. All right. So that's a confession. Brainbug. Hey, good to see you. Good to see you, Brainbug. So that's my confession this morning. I go to WebMD way too much. Especially since I'm afraid to go into the doctor's office, right? I have to switch doctors. I'm afraid of the doctor's office. I don't know if anyone else here in the States, been putting off basic health maintenance. Yeah. Jesse Bear, you're right. My finger itches. You gonna die. You're just gonna die. It's probably some kind of parasitic fungus getting into your fingers. Blazing, glad to see you. And Sammy Jenkins, everyone is here this morning. Good to see you all. So like I said, we're doing an open room after the show, 10 o'clock. The link is actually in the description, and I'll throw the link again in the chat at the end of the show. Phyllis, I'm very glad I can see a real doctor at any time I need to without costing a fortune. Amen. You know, I mentioned the other day when I was working some shtick here about how every penny I have, and every penny, whether you know it or not, fellow Americans, people here in the States, is that every single penny we have is actually cancer money. It is your cancer fund money in case you ever have the horrible disease. All of your assets are basically reserved in one way or another to pay for your treatment. Jesse Bear says, we're going viral video visits, so thankfully still keeping up with preventative. Yeah, that's good, Jesse Bear. That's good. All right, everyone. So that's my confession. WebMD, way too much. Not as bad, not as bad as it used to be. But still, you know, I've been able to manage myself, manage my behavior in this particular area. Oh, yeah, doctors love it. Morning, David Paul. Doctors love it when you tell them, it's like, oh yeah, you know, I was looking on WebMD, and they raise the eyebrow. It's almost as bad as telling, you know, if you're in high school and telling your teacher you research your paper on Wikipedia. It's almost as bad as that. It's like, yeah, I researched my paper on, I don't know, the War of 1812 on Wikipedia. Isn't that a legitimate source? Brainbug says I should get a Phil Lister mask to go see it and to go use at the doctor. Indeed. Dr. Osiris, glad to see you this morning, doctor. We were just talking about doctors and how I go look at WebMD way too much. Way too much. Way too much. Not that I did it recently. No, that would be crazy, right? We're going to do some funny stuff. Let's do some funny stuff. Atheist gamers, when they realize they are playing God of War instead of Science of War. I thought that was clever. Had a chuckle at that. If you were watching the show last night, The Late Show, Jack Paterka was talking about how the Satanic Temple is doing an international conference on moral panics. We talk about moral panics quite a bit here on the channel, and about how there needs to be more education about moral panics, because then you'd at least have children inoculated against these stupid conspiracy theories. But so this me kind of Satan-y. You get Batman looking at the symbol. The bat signal actually here is a symbol for the Satanic Temple. And the last one, is the last meme a cat? Maybe it's a cat. But it's a cat by the computer with a bow tie. And I think that cat's wearing a bow tie far better than Tucker Carlson ever did. And I'm going to say that cat's probably smarter than Tucker Carlson too. All right. All right, so what are we doing? Hey, yeah, you made it for once, Dr. Cyrus. You're here more. Meow. Indeed. All right, so let's go to news stories. First story is about, this is the before and after. The story I found in the Guardian newspaper over the weekend, our biggest challenge, lack of imagination, the scientists turning the desert green. So this is the before on your left, and this is the after. Yes, before and after. And, you know, you are all pretty smart people here. And so you know your history. You know that during the 30s, there was the Dust Bowl here in the States. The Dust Bowl was the result of poor farming techniques. And so dried out the land, parched earth. It just created all this dust. And one of the times, the dust made it from the Midwest all the way over to Washington, D.C. And so one of the issues we have with global climate change is the fact that agriculture has gotten out of control. The agriculture is poorly done in many areas and has created landscapes like what you will see on the left. Yes, the link is down in the description. So we talked about this quite a bit last night in the Late Show. In case you want to check it out, go right ahead. I'm going to give it a cursory look because it's a long article, and we're going to cover the high points. Flying into Egypt early February to make the most important presentation of his life, Ties van der Hoven prepared by listening to the podcast 13 Minutes to the Moon, the story how NASA accomplished the lunar landings. The mission he was discussing with the Egyptian government was more earthbound in nature, but every bit as ambitious. It could even represent a great leap for mankind. Van Hoven is a co-founder of Weathermakers, a Dutch firm of holistic engineers with a plan to regreen the Sinai Peninsula, the small triangle of land that connects Egypt to Asia. I don't know how small it is. I think it's a good-sized triangle of land. Within a couple of decades, the Weathermakers believe the Sinai could be transformed from a hot, dry, barren desert into a green haven teeming with life, forests, wetlands, farming land, wild flora and fauna. A regreened Sinai would alter local weather patterns and even change the direction of the winds, bringing more rain, the Weathermakers believe, hence their name. This type of changing large areas of land have been done in China. In fact, the story's about to talk about that and about the miracle, the modern miracle, the scientific wonder that was done in China. It sounds impossibly far-fetched, but not only is the Weathermakers' plan perfectly feasible, they insist it is precisely the type of project humanity should be getting its head around right now. In recent years, discussion about the climate crisis has predominantly focused on fossil fuels and greenhouse gases. Now, we're coming to realize that the other side of that coin is protecting and replenishing the natural world. There is no better mechanism for removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than nature, but in the last 5,000 years, human activity has reduced the Earth's total biomass by an estimated 50% and destroyed or degraded 70% of the world's forests. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, I'm sorry, Antonio, I pronounced your last name like that, put it last year, human activities are at the root of our descent into chaos, but that means human action can help solve it. So there are ways of regreening vast areas of land. In 2016, Hoven was contacted by the Egyptian representative who had talked about who asked by the Egyptian government to take a look at restoring Lake Bartowil, a lagoon in the north coast of the Sinai. The lake was once 220 to 40 meters deep, but today it's just a few meters deep. Dredging the lake and cutting channels to allow more water in from the Mediterranean would make it deeper, cooler, and less salty, all of which would boost fish stocks. But Van der Hoven does not want to stop there. If I feel I'm on the right track, it's difficult for people to distract me, he says. He began looking at the Sinai Peninsula in more detail, its history, weather patterns, geology, tides, plants, and animal life, even religious texts. He took himself off other projects and spent long hours in his apartment surrounded by charts, maps, books, and sketch diagrams. People were afraid for me. He just wasn't keeping himself up. It turns out that the Sinai was green at one point, and it turns out that poor farming techniques destroyed the soil. And what happens when you destroy the soil? When you don't have enough biomass in the soil, when you get rid of trees and grasses and shrubs, the water will just come down. It'll rain, right? But it will roll off. It will roll off into flash floods, which will cause more soil erosion, creating this non-virtuous feedback loop, a feedback loop of crap. Let's see. What turned the Sinai into a desert was most likely human activity. Wherever they settle, humans tend to chop down trees and clear land. This loss of vegetation affects the land's ability to retain moisture. Grazing animals trample and consume plants when they try to grow back. The soil loses its structure and is washed away, hence the silt in Lake Bartowil. Van Hoven calculated the lake contained 2.5 cubic meters of silt. If one were restored to the Sinai, this vast reserve of nutrient-rich material was exactly what would be needed. It became clear we had a massive opportunity, he says. It wasn't the solution to a single problem. It was the solution to all the problems. All the problems? all the problems. So this is just talking about, once again, I am contracting the insane amount of material and awesome information in this Guardian piece. So they're looking forward to dredging the lake, the lagoon, redistributing the silt, and using that to plant native trees and grasses. Another useful measure could be global temperature. In other words, why are we doing this? In addition to sequestering carbon, green areas also help cool the planet. Deserts are heat producers, reflecting about 60 to 70% of the solar energy that falls on them straight back into the atmosphere. In areas covered by vegetation, much of that solar energy is instead used in evapotranspiration, the process of condensation and evaporation by which the water moves between the plants and the atmosphere. If vegetation comes back, you increase cover, you reduce temperature, you reduce solar reflection, you start creating a stable climate, says Van der Hoeven. If we want to do something about global warming, we have to do something about deserts. It turns out the Sinai Peninsula is like this hinge, too, of different weather systems. If they can manage to regreen the Sinai Peninsula, that means the weather systems change enough so that the surrounding area will get more rain, too. In North Africa, pretty exciting stuff. Once again, links to the articles in the description. So that's the hopeful part of today's Disappointed Cat Morning Show. There's going to be another hopeful story, don't worry. But we're just going to kind of descend from here, everyone. That's just a warning. I'm going to check out the chat. Oh, thank you, Dr. Osiris, for placing the link to my humble blog, Comedy Atheist blog right there. It is, Jess. It is amazing. It is mind-blowing stuff. You start looking at the picture. Once again, I'm just going to show the picture again. I'm just going to show the before and after again. Before and after. And the size of the land that was transformed in China is the size of the Netherlands. It is a good-sized piece of land that was transformed. It started out, I believe, in 1995. It only took when you think about it, a few decades. What happens too, and I'm just going to say something that's obvious to everyone. Once you transform the land from the left to the right, the people who live there, one, people do live there. Two, people become richer. People just have more money because they are producing. They are farming. They're farmers there. And everyone's happier. But what does it take to do something like that? It takes vision, and it takes a government willing to put money into infrastructure. That's what it is. And I'm going to go back to the point I've made many times here. We know what needs to be done. We know what needs to be done. It's just the political will to do it, to execute on it. We know what needs to be done. If we can do this, we can do so many other things to limit the misery and suffering on this planet. All right, Mordecai. How you doing, Dr. Mordecai? Let's see what it... let's see if there's anything else in the chat I need to respond to or want to respond to. Or I can. Let's see. Here, David Paul says, Dr. David Orr has good books on climate change, and The Uninhabitable Earth is a good informational book. Thank you for mentioning that. Wooly Ignorant, good morning. Good morning. All right. Oh, wow, the Salton Sea. That's right. I think that's in California, isn't it? The Salton Sea. And also, the Russians did a Lake Azrael? Aral. The Sea of Aral, I believe, is the lake in the Soviet Union, or used to be the Soviet Union, that was pretty much destroyed by mismanagement. All right, so next story, Idaho. What the F is going on? And thank you, Phil Lister. Aral, thank you. That was a lake just pretty much devastated by incompetency, by mismanagement. Phil Lister for the win. Woo, Phil Lister. All right, so we started off with some hope. Let's talk about Idaho. Oh, no, are we going to talk about sex scandals? Nope, Idaho. COVID-19 outbreak forces Idaho legislature to close its doors for weeks. COVID-19 outbreak in the Idaho legislature has sidelined lawmakers for more than 2 weeks as they tried to gain infections under control. House lawmakers recessed Friday until April 6th, with the Senate following suit shortly afterward. It was not our plan to do this yet, said Senate Pro Temp Chuck Winder, a Boise Republican. We wanted to work and try to have all our business done by a week from today. Republican House Speaker Scott Bedke said the move was out of an abundance of caution and that it was only a pause to break the cycle of transmission. I know what you're all thinking. Andy, does this story just talk about how Republicans refuse to wear masks and wouldn't follow public health guidelines, and how the Republican leaders, like, we can't make people do things. I can't. Well, yes, it's all that, but let's it's like a Greek tragedy. Let's just continue, or a farce. Maybe it's a Greek tragedy. Maybe it's a farce. Let's continue. On Friday morning, 6 House members and 2 senators had contracted the virus this year. As of Friday, several other staff members have also tested positive for the coronavirus since January. Top Republicans have repeated to decline to implement basic public health measures, such as a mask mandate or the requirement that members physically distance themselves from others. Instead, they cut capacity in committee rooms and installed air purifiers. Many lawmakers frequently don't wear masks, including some Democrats. Let's see. There's regretting of the way we conducted the safety protocols to this point, Bedke said, noting he still won't implement a mask mandate when lawmakers return next month. Why would he mandate a mask mandate, right? Because COVID-19 isn't real. It's fake news. I heard it from former President Citizen Trump. We'll certainly elevate the issue with our members again. I will always stop short of telling them what to do, he said. I don't feel like I have the authority as a speaker. Actually, as a speaker, you do have the authority. You know, when you're in management, your job is to manage. The House began debating measure Thursday to bar any school district or state or local government from implementing a mask mandate in the future, but tabled the bill to amend it later. Several Republican lawmakers have denied that the coronavirus should even be considered a pandemic. Some, including Lieutenant Governor Janice McEachen, attended a mask burning rally earlier this month at the Idaho Capitol. Yes, there was a mask burning event. I believe we covered it in the show in the last week or two. So the Senate had to close, the legislature had to close down in Idaho. They were considering a bill forcing or telling municipalities, telling school districts that they cannot do a mask mandate while they were in the middle of an outbreak. It really does hurt my brain. It hurts the thinky parts of my brain right here, the forebrain. Mass burning, brain bug. Mass burning rallies. Mask burning rallies where children throw masks into the fire. Well, this is it, Digital Book Room. They'll shut themselves down, right? But they don't want, they can't tell. Their excuse is that, well, we can't tell people what to do. All right. Are we going to go? Are we going to do the, well, Imaginary God says, Ken Burns did a great documentary on the Dust Bowl. I have not seen that documentary, but I do want to see that documentary. Definitely. Thank you, Imaginary God, for mentioning that. All right. So what's the next? What are we doing next, everyone? I'm going to jump into the, there's the sex scandal thing we're going to talk about first. I guess we'll talk about that, all right? It's not the Catholic priest sex scandal you're thinking about. It's not that one. It's this one. It is priest and dominatrix charged with vandalism after having threesome in the church. You might remember this story from last October, everyone, because yes, it doesn't have anything to do with minors. It's just a priest having a threesome with two sex workers in a church. And to tell you the truth, I am. Have you had a sex scandal, Andy? No, certainly not in a church. Certainly not in a church. So yes, this is the Catholic sex scandal regarding a priest having sex in his church, with sex workers. Here it is. And here's this. Charges have finally been filed, and this is from the Friendly Atheist. Charges have finally been filed against a Catholic priest in Louisiana and two dominatrices after they had and recorded. Of course, if you're going to have sex on the altar inside your own church, you're going to record it. Only to be caught by an eyewitness walking past the building. It makes you wonder. It's like, not only did they have sex in his own church on the altar, but it was in such, were the doors open? Was it well lit? Well, I imagine if they're recording it, it would have to be pretty well lit, wouldn't it? So someone just walking by the church looks in and sees that. It's like, oh. We do know the altar was quickly burned and replaced in the Archdiocese of New Orleans. Making matters even more complicated, Clark's other job as chaplain of Pope John Paul II High School was a position he held only because his predecessor, wait for it, sent inappropriate texts to a student, in addition to sexually abusing another child in 2013. And here's the thing: you think to yourself, "Oh, this sex scandal, it's just between consenting adults," but it does have connection to, of course, other non-savory Catholic sex scandals. Anyway, on Thursday, Clark and the two women were formally charged with institutional vandalism. A lawyer for the two women said he was glad for the obscenity charges were dropped, but that it was still absurd to hit them with a lesser charge. After waiting nearly 6 months, the state has decided to move forward with a lesser charge of institutionalized vandalism. It is clear the state went out of its way to contort the facts of this case in order to fit their own narrative, Attorney Bradley Phillips said in a prepared statement. If they are found guilty, they can face up to 2 years in prison, along with a fine up to $1,000. Considering no one was hurt and no one was supposed to see them, a jail sentence seems. And I agree with Hammond with this. Hammond Meta wrote this. Make them pay for the damages and clean up and move on with it. Hammond wants to just reiterate the sex itself was never an issue. It appears to be consensual. They're all adults. And who cares? It's no one's business. But this is what Clark wants. He shouldn't be a Catholic priest. Oh, yeah. Still, it's fair to say he shouldn't have done it in the church properly or within sight of the public. Yeah, it's as if this gentleman wasn't making good decisions. I know, as you say to yourself, well, he looks like a fairly reasonable person. He looks fairly rational. I don't see how he could have made bad choices. This is they completely leveled up their game on this one, Jesse Bear. They completely, it's least between consenting adults. Right? Be thankful for small things. I feel like this is a joke. Why did Satan perform an exorcism on a priest? I feel like there's a punchline to that, Dr. Osiris. Never had sex in a church. Never even thought of doing that. No, I've never had sex in a church either. Dr. Mordecai makes a regular sex. That's right. Oh, blazing. I had regular sex on monastery grounds once. Interesting. I'm not really sure what gormless means, Dr. Osiris, but this gentleman here, he looks like a character. That's what he does. All right. Yeah, this sex scandal is just, that's what it is. Exactly. All right. Yeah, okay, so I guess we are going to the next, we're going to do halftime show. Let's do halftime show, everyone.
Hey, Cooter. What doing? Me too. I love you. Yep. 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 Yep.
It's a cat and its owner. We're hoping to get a cat here. My girlfriend and I, we've been looking at cats, shelter cats. We've been looking at shelter cats. We haven't found the right fit yet. Online, we've been looking online at shelter cats. Right now, you can adopt cats in the Boston area. You have to make an appointment first, because of COVID-19. So we are currently looking for a cat. We're in high-level negotiations about what kind of cat we want. I prefer that cat that we just saw. That cat, if I could have that cat, that would be great. Or a cat, or a clone of that cat. Oh, really? Jesse Beattie kittens went up to see. That's funny. All right. So what's the next story? Oh, DC statehood. All right. Let's talk about DC statehood for a minute. During the election, everyone was talking about stacking the court. I was talking about stacking the Senate. And the way to stack the Senate is, of course, creating more blue states. Puerto Rico voted in favor of becoming a state last November. And DC's been chomping at the bit to become a state for decades at this point, for decades. Now with the Democrats in power, and the Democrats realize that they're in this existential struggle with fascism, maybe, possibly, we are going to see 2 true blue new state senators from Washington, D.C. Let's check out the story. Links in the description. Now I got to find the story. Here it is. With stronger Democratic support, D.C. statehood fight returns to Capitol Hill. I believe this is from NPR. Is that from NPR? I think so. 30 years after Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton first introduced a bill for Washington, D.C. statehood, she returns to Capitol Hill to do it again, this time with the broadest support for the cause to date. We've gotten off of the wish list to an approach of a new reality, Norton, the district's non-voting district, tells NPR. Her legislation, H.R. 51, will be the subject of the House Oversight Committee hearing on Monday. That's today. It was approved by the Democratic-led House in a historic vote last year, but never reached the GOP-controlled Senate. And although Democrats now hold a slim majority in the Senate, the measure faces long odds in the upper chamber. The bill would reduce the size of the federal district and admit the state of Washington Douglas Commonwealth in honor of the abolitionist Frederick Douglass into the Union. Advocates contend statehood cause is a fight for racial justice, as a majority of DC's 700,000 residents are people of color. All we're looking for is equality with other Americans, especially since we pay the highest federal taxes per capita in the United States, Norton says, noting the 2 senators that each state gets, along with a House representative with voting power, something she does not have. So she's a delegate, but she does not vote. And I know this sounds very obtuse for many people overseas and may not be acquainted with with our crazy federal system here, but Washington, D.C. is considered to be a federal city, no delegates that vote, no representative, no senators. It's just considered to be a city managed by the federal government, which creates problems. It creates problems. With a record number of co-sponsors, Norman says the bill is guaranteed passage in the House. The Senate version of the bill has more than 40 Democratic co-sponsors, including Senate Majority Chuck Schumer of New York. President Biden has repeatedly indicated support for D.C. statehood. Without Republican backing, the main obstacle of statehood lies in the Senate, and specifically the chamber's legislative filibuster. Right now, the Senate has a big brick wall in front of it called the filibuster that House bills are passing and slamming right into, said Eli Zupnik. That's a great name, Zupnik, spokesman for Fix Our Senate, a campaign focused on eliminating the filibuster. Unless that brick wall is dismantled, there's no chances of progress on any of these bills at all. Yeah. Let's take another look. Most Democrats claim the filibuster has become a tool of obstruction that prevents them from enacting. I'm sorry, I just completely lost my place there because I was looking at my cheat sheet. Most Democrats claim the filibuster has become a tool of obstruction, one that prevents them from enacting the agenda they campaigned on and that the American people expect them to deliver on. Eliminating the filibuster is key to unblocking the door to progress at all. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed to make progress. You still need 50 votes for the issues you have to get done, Zupnik says. But if the filibuster exists, there's no chance at all. So basically, we talked about this before, that President Biden is in favor of filibuster reform. There are bills right now that can pass the Senate on a straight 50-50 vote. They're financial bills via a process called reconciliation. You just need a 50 majority vote in the Senate. And also for nominees, the president's nominees, you just need a 50 vote. It turns out the filibuster has been used many times for racists. It is a way how minorities, well, in this case, Senate Republicans, are able to maintain power. And it's a way how the South has been able to, for many years, derail civil rights legislation. And we're going to be actually looking at a video in a few seconds about that. But DC statehood, it's happening. Well, there's opening discussions. There's going to be issues. There's going to be discussion about it today in the Senate. What exactly is a filibuster? I don't speak American. A filibuster is a horrible, horrible procedure in the Senate that can kill legislation. So you need a supermajority. If a person says they're going to filibuster a bill, that means you need 60 votes out of 100 as against to 50 votes out of 100. And since the Republicans filibuster everything because they don't want the federal government to work, unless it's for tax cuts for the rich, you have to get a supermajority in the Senate, and that's impossible right now. That is impossible right now because we're in such a divided country. So, and there was a great article in The Economist I'll probably share with you tomorrow just to talk more about the filibuster. But most countries do not work on this supermajority system for every single piece of legislation. It's a way for the legislative branch not to work. And I'm going to say it again. When the legislative branch doesn't work, then the powers go to the executive branch or to the judiciary. And that's dangerous. All right. Hey, girlfriend, how you doing? Should we make that foreign country Guam a U.S. state too? That's a callback to Marjorie Taylor Greene, that horrible, horrible woman from Georgia, the 14th district in Georgia, thinking that Guam was a foreign country. Yes, we should make Guam that foreign country. Maybe the Middle East too. Why not, right? All right. Dr. Mordecai says the filibuster is to speak mucho bull crap. It doesn't. Yes, it does not happen. It doesn't happen in many functional systems. In most European countries, there are some issues that need a supermajority in some countries, but mostly it's just majority. It's just a majority vote. All right. So what are we going to talk? Are we going to see a video? Something from CNN, CBSN. It's CBS News. We're going to take a look at the future of the filibuster. And we'll check it out. Dun, dun, dun.
There's a push on Capitol Hill to ensure all Americans have their voices heard through the For the People Act. But the legislation is facing a major snag that could potentially kill it. The Democrat-backed bill passed the House but is now stuck in the Senate. Designated Senate Bill 1, it faces a filibuster. The goal of the bill is to expand voting rights, change campaign finance laws, and limit gerrymandering, among other things. Joining us now to talk more about this is Michael Wines. He is a national correspondent with the New York Times. Michael, first tell us a little more about Senate Bill 1. What's at stake and why is it running into roadblocks in the Senate?
Well, when this bill first started out in the last session of Congress, it was basically a Democratic wish list. It was an effort to state what Democrats thought ought to be done to change the system. Since then, I think it's really become, in a lot of people's eyes, sort of an existential piece of legislation. The last election saw the president winning by 11,000 votes, 20,000 votes in some very big states. That was followed by, in the spring, efforts by Republicans in those states and others to enact laws restricting voting, keeping people from turning out. So this bill has become, rather than just a statement, it's become an answer, a way to, in Democrats' mind, keep voting free, keep it open, keep it available to as many people as possible, rather than being restricted.
Some Senate Democrats oppose the potential changes. What are their concerns?
Senate Democrats?
Yes.
Some of the Senate Democrats, I think, have concerns about some of the provisions that have nothing to do with elections. For instance, campaign finance reforms. They look at it as a free speech issue. Other Democrats like much of what's in the bill, but they have concerns about doing away with the filibuster. The filibuster is a big issue on this. Yeah. They're not going to get 10 votes in the Senate to pass this bill as is. So you would have to have all 50 Democrats to vote for it. And there are some who have real reluctance about abandoning this Senate tool.
Michael, we're talking about the attempts, the wanting to kill the filibuster. What is the Republican take on that?
Well, the Republicans say that the filibuster is an old and established part of Senate procedures, and that it enables protections for the minority in the Senate. That if you simply eliminate the filibuster, that the majority, regardless of whether it's Republicans or Democrats, will simply run roughshod. Democrats disagree with that. They say that the filibuster has been used, particularly in recent decades, to stall almost any legislation that the minority doesn't agree with. And in fact, that's true. You know, the filibuster these days is not what we saw in Mr. Smith Comes to Washington, where you stand up for a day or 2 days and talk constantly. It's become a method of blocking any consideration of legislation simply by saying we object to it. And if you can't get 60 votes, the legislation doesn't move.
Michael, President Biden says he's on board for the so-called talking filibuster. Is that more likely to get traction in the Senate?
Hard to tell. We still have some Republicans, Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona, Joe Manchin in West Virginia, perhaps others who have real doubts about this. I think it's going to come down in the end to pressure from the grassroots, from their constituents. And this bill actually has aroused incredible angst among groups out in the states, from Arizona to Georgia, groups like Indivisible, which were founded after President Trump took office. They've really become agitated about this, and they've started a nationwide campaign to try to persuade senators to push it, and if necessary, to modify the filibuster perhaps, so that you can get this bill through.
If the filibuster was eliminated, how could that impact future legislation?
Well, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had a speech on the Senate floor just the other day in which he said that if the filibuster is abandoned, he would start a scorched earth policy. That he would ensure that nothing in the Senate moved. He said you need a unanimous consent even to turn on the lights in the Senate. And so he would use every procedural method at his disposal to ensure the Senate couldn't act.
Michael Weyer.
He also said that Republicans will come back in power someday, and when they do, there's going to be a lot of legislation that Democrats don't like that will be brought up and passed over their objections because they won't have the protection of the filibuster.
We will all be watching. Michael Wines, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so there we go about filibuster reform. That's weird. Hey, Kendra. Good morning. How you doing? Just talking about the filibuster here. Yeah, I know, right, Jesse Beer? The thing is that Democrats can't do is be bullied by Republicans. Mitch McConnell does whatever he can to stymie, to derail Democrats. the idea is that you want to take away the tools that he has. And the main tool Republicans have is the filibuster. You get rid of the filibuster, and then the Senate, the legislative branch, becomes functional again. And you can also do filibuster reform in the sense that you just carve out special areas that the filibuster doesn't work. That's what reconciliation is. That's how the president can nominate his people, office holders, with only a 50% vote. You can't filibuster those things. You can easily just write down and say, statehood, it's just going to be a 50-50 vote. And just do that. And carve out that section of the filibuster. There are many ways of attacking the filibuster, but the one thing that's clear is that if we don't do it by the midterms, if the left doesn't do this by the midterms, then it probably won't happen after the midterms. So the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. And in case you live in West Virginia, you should be calling up Manchin's office and telling him, hey, you got to back filibuster reform. Oh, yeah. Gets me angry. This filibuster thing's been boiling. So what have we covered? We covered a lot over the last 46 minutes. Climate change, a way to combat climate change, a way to reclaim land that's now arid. Because a lot of the places that are arid on the planet caused by human farming, by subsistence farming, and there are ways of reclaiming land. They did it in China, and they're thinking about doing it on the Sinai Peninsula too. Check out the story. There are links to the Guardian article down in the description. What else we talked about? The Catholic sex scandal. No, not the pedophile one. It's the priest having sex with sex workers, having a threesome, and filming it in his own church. They're being charged with institutional vandalism. So they were charged recently. DC statehood. It's a train. They're talking about it today in the Senate. And the filibuster, how we have to get rid of the filibuster. And how to get rid of the filibuster. All right. So that's it. I mean, we burned through the stories today, to tell you the truth. Let's do the last video. Let's do the last, something to make you feel good, something to put a smile on your face. And once again, if you want to show up for the post-show, we're doing we are doing a, nope, that is the wrong link, actually. I'm going to put in the right link in a couple of seconds. But first, let's do something funny before we put a bow on all this, all right? Let's do something funny. What are you doing? What are you doing? What do you mean you don't know? Get out of the washer. We are very cat heavy on the videos today, everyone. But that kind of makes sense, right? That kind of makes sense for the Disappointed Cat morning show. The after party today, the open room. Here is the link. Here's the StreamYard link. I'm putting it in the chat. It's going to start at 10. I'm going to give myself a few minutes in between, and it'll run for a half an hour to an hour as long as we want to. The link to the after party too is in the description below. If you want to come on, if a couple of people come on, we'll do this. If I'm just alone, there'll be no after party, there'll be no after show. But in case you do want to come on and just hang out and talk about anything, to tell you the truth, I'm willing to talk about anything. And so yeah, are you supposed to talk softly to cats? I don't know, Scott, dude. I don't know. I've always talked softly to my cat when I had a cat. Yeah. So that's it. I'm going to show a video. I want to say thank you to my patrons. I don't thank my patrons enough, but I want to say thank you to my patrons. And I'm not going to be doing a Jenga show today at 3 p.m. because my little tripod that I used for the show, it's gone. I actually borrowed it from a friend of mine. He wanted it back. So I have to order another tripod. So until I get another tripod, really doing the Jenga show at 3 o'clock is not possible. So, but we are doing an after show today at 10 o'clock. You want to come in, hang out, talk about whatever you want to talk about. That's cool. I just put the link up there. I also put the link in the description down in the description area. So once again, I'm going to be signing off. I'm going to say thank you to my patrons with this lovely video. Lovely video? Yeah, I'll say lovely video since I made it. Take care, everyone. And hopefully I'll see you at 10 o'clock, right?